This is History Unit 2, Lesson 13, Addressing the Essential Question. Students are going to prepare for and then engage in a Socratic seminar, which they have done before in this unit. And then they're going to write an argument paper answering one of the essential questions. In Activity 1, they're becoming oriented to the task. And to do that, you want to review the essential questions with them, which they have, of course, seen before, and they've been thinking about these for a while, but they do need to look over those and think about the task that they're about to do. One of the things that you might consider is having students pick the question that interests them most. There are 3 of them, so as a group you can have them pick just one question and they can prepare for that for the Socratic seminar. Or if you want, you can divide the class among the 3 questions and use the fishbowl technique to have discussions about each of the 3 questions. Then it will take longer because you're going to have 3 separate discussions, or you can pick 2 of 3. But this is something that you should decide, maybe perhaps along with the class, let them help you decide. You also need to remind students about what Socratic seminars are like. They've already participated in one. Have them reflect about what they can do to improve on that discussion if necessary. So in Activity 2, they're actually doing the preparation for the Socratic seminar. There is a graphic organizer for each one of the questions, and in that graphic organizer they record evidence that addresses the question. You might need to remind them that they should review all of their readings and notes. And pay attention to the fact that the 3 different questions require different kinds of notes reflected in the graphic organizers. For example, the 3rd question asks about the way concepts of liberty and freedom changed, and this requires students to think about the differences between earlier in the 60s and later in the 60s, so the graphic organizer is set up with early and late if there was a change and what that change was. Also note that not all the readings will address all the questions or parts of the questions, so that they may have some blank spaces. Tell students that this is okay, as long as they review each one to see if there is information in there pertaining to the questions. Activity 3 is actually participating in the seminar, so students engage in the discussion either in a whole group or in a fishbowl. If they're in a fishbowl, then students who are outside the fishbowl are going to be evaluating the students inside the fishbowl. Before students begin the seminar, they should review the rubric. The rubric reminds students about the kinds of things that are important in such discussions. You need to remember to stand back and let students control the discussion. This is something that, this is a discussion among students. It is not a discussion between the teacher and the students. It's important to decide ahead of time how students will take turns. If it worked really well the first time you had a Socratic seminar, you might want to keep that way. If it didn't work so well, you might discuss with your class some alternate ways of doing it. And while students are engaged in discussion, use the checklist that's in the teacher's guide. There's a checklist that you can put each student's name in to keep track of students' performance. In Activity 4, they're going to be thinking about claim and evidence in answer to one of the questions, and then they're going to write a first draft of their essay. So when they've been answering the questions, their answer to the question is actually the claim. At the end of the discussion, they might want to revise that claim, in other words, their answer to that question. And they might also have some idea of some better support for the claim than they had originally thought of. So they can revise their claim and they should list the support for the claim that they got through their prior reading and also through the discussion. They're going to write a first draft of the argument. And when they are done, they're going to work in pairs to evaluate the essays using the rubric, and they're going to then refine their own essays based upon the evaluation. So, as always, it's a good idea to let students see and discuss the rubric before they begin the outline and the first draft of the essay, because this will help them prepare the essay in a way that's going to be evaluated well. When students are in pairs and they're evaluating each other's essay, you may notice that some of their evaluations are superficial or they're having some kind of difficulty doing this task. If they do, then it might be important for you to model what makes a good critique, what makes a good evaluation, and get them back on track. So in Activity 5, they're going to explain the choices of evidence they use to support their claims. That is, they are going to explain why they used the evidence they did. And remember, the evidence, the relation between the evidence and the claim is called the warrant. And they're going to figure this out using a graphic organizer. This is an essential part of argumentation, the claim, the evidence, and the warrant. And so thinking about that kind of evidence is important. Again, this is an important activity. It gets students to think about the relative contribution of different kinds of evidence to support an argument. And so when they're finished with this, it might be worthy of a group discussion. And it also might be difficult for them to do, so you may need to guide them through the process, model, and explain before they begin this exercise. And that is the end of Lesson 13. This is the final culminating lesson in Unit 2. They have been thinking about answers to this question throughout Unit 2, so this is their chance to be able to answer that question.